Now, some people think the West Riding of Yorkshire is ugly and depressing. Being a Yorkshireman, of course, I disagree with them. But after all, you see, in the West Riding, it always looks as if the mills and the steep little rows of stone houses have somehow grown out of the hills, as if these towns were fantastic outcroppings of the Pennine Rock.
What J.B. Priestley saw in 1933, I can see from the train today. The railway line from Leeds to Manchester is a funny old mix of spectacular landscape and industrial wreckage. Lovely hills, horrible mills, all the other way round. The classic industrial tripes and guts of England still. Coal, chemicals, cotton, wool and railways. Come out of the Diggle Tunnel that separates Yorkshire from Lancashire and you come to the junction at Staley Bridge. And like many northern towns still, the old clichés of the industrial past are evident. The plumbing shows. That doesn't make it necessarily ugly. Staley Bridge town stretches with houses and mills halfway up the hills on three sides, like a rockery.
It is beautiful country. Even in winter, I've seen when I've been up by the reservoir there, snow and ice on the ground with the dog, sat smoking my pipe, and it's just as beautiful, if not more beautiful than Switzerland. And I've been to Switzerland, but I'd sooner be up there by the reservoir.
Mr. Frank Swallow, I stopped off to see, lives in the end house of an industrial village, Carbrook, at the end of Staley Bridge. A village built around Tootle, the shirt people. Neat grey stone houses, a pub, a bowling green, a stone wall to sit upon, and surely a Coronation bus shelter. This was cotton country, and all the more beautiful now the chimneys aren't smoking like they used to do. Although the mills, the buildings are still standing, they've been put to new uses. I'd come to this region of England to see now dead monuments to King Cotton, the mills of a landscape so mauled by the first industrial revolution. And yet, now King Cotton's gone, is there a return to a former, greener, merry England?
I mean, can you imagine on a sunny day that people can't open the windows because the smell is so vile? Some were so bad that they made people vomit. And not only that, people were embarrassed to, even if they had the courage to invite their friends up for afternoon tea, you know, and put up with the smells, they were even ashamed to walk round the village, what should have been a lovely village, because it looked like a disused bomb site. Hundreds and hundreds of rusty old drums and bulk storage tanks.
King Cotton's gone, but chemical cowboys have moved in. Now, Mr. Swallow and the people of this handsome village of Carbrook are used to living cheek by jowl with big industry, Britain's bread hanging by Lancashire thread. As Priestley himself wrote in The Journey, you can't make omelettes without breaking eggs. You cannot become rich by selling the world your coal and iron and chemicals without some dirt and disorder. Frank Swallow had lived next door to Tootle's Carbrook Mill all his life. But when it was sold to cowboys, it began to pile up drums of God knows what chemical concoctions. Oh, William Blake, that was when the dark satanic night occurred.
At 4 o'clock on the Saturday, I'd arrived back from having 14 days holiday in Minorca. And my garden was like a wilderness. So I'd worked all Saturday and Sunday. On about 8 o'clock Sunday evening, surveyed my garden and decided I'd done a beautiful job on it. I had every intention then of going in, having a shower and changing. I made the mistake of sitting in the chair and I fell asleep. And at 1:45, there was a terrific explosion. I ran to the side entrance, looked through, and the flames were 100 feet high. I went back to the telephone to ring the fire engines. My telephone was dead. I grabbed my wife, ran out the front of the house, through the next garden, down to the public phone box to ring the emergency services. By that time, of course, the drums started going up like rockets, and certainly I went through the war for 6 years, and I'd never seen anything quite like it on that night.
Then Mrs. Swallow brought in their photographs to me of the occasion.
This is from the back. Now, this is our house here, and that's one of the drums that hit the roof. It just caught us as it was...
It's like a fireball, that. Look at that.
Yes.
That was 7 o'clock the following morning, and there's a sort of column of...
Another explosion then.
That was nothing. We were in the garden when that happened, but it burnt your hair, didn't it?
Burnt your hair?
Singed your hair at the back.
The first explosion, which waked me, blew 39 windows in this house. It was just like a bomb going off. For hours after that, drums were just going off like rockets. 3 were in my garden, 1 went through the roof, £15,000 worth of damage to my house. The whole village had to be evacuated. And, you know, it's a pitiful sight to see old people in dressing gowns and pyjamas at 1 o'clock in the morning being evacuated.
And if there had been a breeze that night, and there normally is in Carbrook, Mr. Swallow and the whole village might have gone up. How many more ex-King cotton mills are there like this in the north, ready to blow the wheels off William Blake's chariot of fire? I swished through the rain of the Carbrook district to see a younger man, living in a modern private estate of noticeably thinner houses, Mr. Clegg. In work, his line's washing machine repairing, and he'd witnessed the chemical cowboys and showed me his photographs of the action that night.
Explosions at rates of 10 a minute, you know, not just a single explosion, almost like machine gun, repeating all the time. And at each explosion, a barrel would go flying up into the air.
What did you do?
I grabbed my camera and run up.
To take a picture?
Well, I got up there and found out I didn't put my soldier stockings on. You know, and ran all the way up.
But what about your wife and children?
Oh, I made sure they were.
As everyone in Staley Bridge a brownie or a Pentax, you do need one to catch the wonder colours of explosion. And will they have, I wonder, exhibitions? Little Lowries with their burnt easels, snaps of the bangs of Staley Bridge, for young Mr. Clegg was witness to a second whopper.
Saturday morning, I was doing some shopping, and I was driving past Manroe Chemical Works in Staley Bridge. And again, just a terrific explosion that seemed to lift the car off the road, upwards. I just stopped and just seen the roof and the front of the building. Well, it was just gutted. There was no roof or anything. There was debris everywhere, twisted metal, and you know, just totally devastated, just gone, just in 1 second. No roof, no insides, just a skeleton of what looked like a still.
In the gathering dusk, as Mr. Clegg told me of the big bad bangs, I looked from his windows up beyond the electricity pylons, striding to the clean, sharp line of the moorland tops. How could such a thing happen today with all our planning regulations? But it does. Not as bad as it was? ? For J.B. Priestley, he was certain the muck and brass of 19th century industrial England had done more harm than good to the real enduring England. The Victorian individualists, he said, had found a green and pleasant land, left a wilderness of dirty bricks. They'd blackened fields and sown filth and ugliness with a lavish hand. And today, well.
Carbrook itself runs through a clough just before Mosley, and it's really a picturesque, a lovely place. And it opens up to a pond. And at the time when Kempstowe was at its height, it was absolutely filthy. You couldn't stand at the side of it because of the stench. There was nothing lived in it at all. I never see a frog or not even a beetle or anything at all. It was absolutely horrible. The colours especially were all colours of the rainbow. There was reds, blues, greens, whatever they tipped into it at that moment. And it's just like a carpet, a thick carpet of algae now. But if you scrape the top of that away, there's just a black sludge underneath. Well, in fact, the dog walked across it, thinking it was solid ground, and he just disappeared through it. We pulled him out of it, and believe me, what he was covered in was horrible.
Off on the train from Stalybridge Junction to Manchester, a 7-mile industrial journey, always in the sight of mill chimneys, mills which rich men once built and gave as wedding presents to their sons. And today, look out of this train window, it's a very odd feeling in 1983, this now flat landscape, as if a sudden death ray has struck. For the chimneys stand, but no smoke comes out. Oh, they're a crane working. And a chocolate-coloured bus, orange top and chocolate bottom, ploughing through the rain. Mather and Platt, big firm, making fire extinguishers. Good job in this area. Miles Platting Junction, groundsel in the sleepers, and slowly the train dips into Manchester, Victoria.
Platform 14. Hotel fatigue, more faster than please. Calling at Rochdale, Littlebury, Tumberton, Hepburn Bridge, Marlon Road, Salisbury, Halifax, Bradford, Newcastle, and
There is a suggestion, wrote Priestley of the fortress about Manchester. You seem always to be moving, a not too happy dwarf, between rows of huge, square black warehouses. Even the public buildings, big, solid, impressive fellows, look as if they are slowly transforming themselves into square black warehouses. And this unhappy dwarf in 1983 made his way to Salford. Salford is the inner city within Greater Manchester, surrounded by city. A grubby urban shambles where L.S. Lowry did his paintings and Walter Greenwood set his novel Love on the Dole, and Sheila Delaney her film Taste of Honey, and Marx's friend Fred Engels had his raincoat factory. I'd come to New Salford to find a man who'd been trying to tell his story recently to investigative journalists of The Guardian and World in Action about what happened to his district one Saturday night in 1982. Mr. Joe Cruncher.
It was about 11:25 because the police story was just about to start on television. So I thought, well, I'll let the dog out for a minute. So I opened the door and I let him out in the garden. And the next thing, there was this blinding flash. And when I looked out, there was balls of fire coming through the air. And there was one landed right in the middle of the garden next door, and it was out in the street, because all the windows and all the doors had been blown out. And this house being side on, all it had done was blown the back door in and cracked the window.
Did you know what it was then?
By then I'd realised it was a chemical works gone off on the other side of the river.
Once again, yes again, in Salford as exploding Staley Bridge, great balls of fire in the night. Though Mr. Cruncher didn't say what happened to the dog. As he talked to me in his neat, new 3 up, 2 down 1960s council house, I thought, these bangs are a proof Lancashire's still manufacturing something mucky.
There was all kinds of things landing in the street. There was pieces of metal as well. You know, like old tins, pieces of 45-gallon drums and 5-gallon drums. Everything that was in the place just went up through, came up and then came down onto the people.
And that included
asbestos, lumps of asbestos. And there was all kinds of stuff coming out of the air. It was raining white rain.
An old warehouse full of dangerous drums with an asbestos roof going up in the middle of a city. in the middle of a neighbourhood redeveloped from the old slums of Engle's, Salford. In the tower blocks nearby, every window blown in, a neighbourhood wrecked.
Within a few days of it happening, the gardens, with all the leaves and grass and stuff in the gardens, were sprinkled with this white stuff. You know, some leaves were completely covered in it, just like somebody had sprayed very fine, very thin paint over them. But even the grass was going yellow in the gardens. But a lady over the road here, she got a son-in-law and that, came and dug all the garden up. And it wasn't until she started showing us there was these like little red things, like lumps of rubber. And we couldn't make out what they were at first. And when we looked at them properly, we realised they were worms that had died and were all shriveled up and they were like a piece of rubber.
You know, I thought to the people of this region, any abstract talk of the Industrial Revolution's nonsense. It is what is coming through the roof for Frank Swallow, Gordon Clegg and Joe Cruncher. The air of post-Priestley's England is undoubtedly cleaner. You can see lots of Salford. No pea soupers now. But what if Joe Cruncher's kids develop a nasty, persistent cough later on in years to come? I felt the same outrage that Priestley felt when he wrote about a previous generation of muck and money men. Who gave them leave to turn this island into an ash pit? Victorian individualists. They may or may not have left us their money, but they've certainly left us their muck. It is, he wrote, as if the country had devoted 100 years of its life to keeping gigantic, sooty pigs, and the people choked by the reek of the sties did not get the bacon. Enough of poetry. Joe Cruncher has to live on in 1983 in Salford, and he took the last rumblings of the old sow's stomach to his local law centre to get a campaign going and sue for the wrong that happened. He's been encouraged to build a thick, ongoing file and use his citizens' rights.
And what about the media? They help?
No.
No.
So sorry to say this, but I went to Granada Television 4 different times, and I took a bag down. I mean, that bag, I've got a bag there with samples in it. And I also took a piece of a bag that I found with paradichlorobenzene on it, and it had a United Nations warning on it, and a big red sign with a big cross on it. And one day they actually sent a bloke down to see me, and he sat down in Granada itself and took a story from me. Never come near, never mentioned it. Then when I did get in touch with him, this has been covered quite a great deal with the Yorkshire television programme.
On asbestos?
Yeah, so I phoned and I spoke to them, and they said they've already done a programme.
So they didn't want to do another one.
Even in Greater Manchester, which is still the second press city of England, oh yes, Joe Cruncher can't get the media attention his neighbourhood's case deserves. You see, viewers and listeners can only have so many explosions, and they do happen when you least expect, and mostly at night. An amateur photographer's snaps from Staley Bridge or Salford are not in the same professional bracket as the news from Beirut. But the media do come to Salford, not for complexities of chemical explosions, but a well-trod writer's story path that never gets overgrown. I crossed the not-so-inky River Irwell from Pegasus Square, Lower Broughton to Regent Road, to meet a current queen of Salford.
Hello, dog. He's a fit dog, isn't he?
He is, well, you've got to have a dog, so, you know, that'll really protect you in here. I mean, you heard him as soon as you got on the bottom of the stairs, didn't you? Well, that's because there were strangers on the stairs. Go and find Leslie. Go on. Leslie! Take the dog, love.
Doreen Jackson had the boys of the media at her like flies to the honeypot, because what she could do was articulate poverty with the capital P. A widow with her children existing in a big brick block of flats, described as probably the worst in Europe. Water from a broken sewer seeps down a concrete stairwell, every window broken years ago. Through the rusty frames, a common courtyard, where wild dogs pack and battered children fall among the broken bottles.
Looking out of your window, how many broken pieces of glass? 1, 2, 3, and how many boarded up?
Oh, God above knows. Over half of them. is boarded up. There should be 206 flats in this estate, and over half is boarded up.
Conditions are so bad, Doreen said, the police don't come, even in pairs. Never seen a vicar, not even with big dogs. Not often the militant left with their glasses. Nobody comes regular, except the milkman and the media.
We had a gentleman round here once that did pictures for a magazine in America, because Margaret Thatcher said there was no poor people in England, and he did pictures to send back to America. He was a freelance photographer, and he came here. I invited him in, we had a coffee, we had a biscuit, we had a natter, and he come to school with me and he took photographs. But he was trying to tell me about where he came from in America, and he said there is some derelict places in America, he said, but not all as derelict as yours.
Doreen Jackson is very photogenic. A Lancashire turban on her head, and she's white, very white. Pebbled glasses and big used arms, a broad pinafore. Take one look at her, and you can understand why that American took so many pictures. That opened the floodgates. Doreen, the queen of poverty. So before the photographer could say mozzarella cheese, knocking at Doreen's door in the Ordsall Flats, Frank Field, Child Poverty Action, and the ex-prof of Sociology, University of Essex, Peter Townsend, et al.
Professor Townsend's been and had
Professor
a look
Townsend?
at the... Oh, well, he's a great friend. You're shocked, aren't you?
Yeah, he's been here.
Oh, he pretty often comes when he's in Manchester. Calls to see me. Peter.
Peter? You call him Peter?
Yeah. Calls me Doreen.
Who else have you had?
Oh, we've had television, we've had Children in Need, Panorama, World in Action, Dimbleby, I think it was that came. They'd been twice then, World in Action.
And they filmed in here, in the room.
Yeah. They ruined all my Christmas decorations with the lights. So I'll never forget it, because I'd saved and saved, and I said to, was when little girl was first born, and I thought, well, I'll give her a good Christmas, because now she can realise, and my husband had died then, and I thought, well, I'll give her a nice Christmas, because the first year she would be without a dad at Christmas. We did it all up, and they come in, and the lights was that high, and that bright, and that warm, that it singed all the silver foil decorations, and I was doing me nut with it.
In Panorama, Poverty Now. Is a third of the British population living on the poverty margin?
Little Wendy Jackson's only 7, too young to remember the unspeakable backstreets. But her mother, Doreen Jackson, only 44 and a widow, is still part of the Salford folklore of destitution. She's not a feckless, whining sponger. She's an intelligent woman who, by sheer misfortune, found herself trying to climb the unending and exhausting sand dune.
Kids are having to run about with no shoes on their feet. If it's raining, you'll see poor little things with no coat on, because there's not enough money to go around for coats. I know from my little girl. I think I should know all about BBC and ITV now, shouldn't I?
You're a sort of expert, aren't you?
I am, yes. But I don't get the same fees as all these stars that start singing.
Philip Panorama Tibbenham was wrong. She has been since we saw her plucked from these sand dunes of poverty to be let a little house with a garden, and she likes it. Thanks to Salford Corporation in the end. And on from Doreen's to central Manchester, by foot. Passing on the way, only 5 minutes from Doreen's wasteland, the high walls that hide the set of Coronation Street. And it did strike me, Granada Television is just about the biggest living building in Manchester now. With its name illuminated in letters on the roof, G-R-A-N-A-D-A, like cotton mill chimneys would have Egypt, perseverance, or Bernstein, in this case, written right up 'em. And past the Midland Hotel, where Priestley stayed, and at the other end of one of Manchester's main streets, not quite as high, is the brand new mill whose chimney'd have Wreath writ up it. They are, you know, the new mills, not as big as the Co-op or British Aerospace, Ferranti or Mather and Platt, but the Manchester Broadcasting Mills. They're in the Tootle Tie and Christie Towel class now, major employers, nearly 3,000 full-time in both of them. That's twice as big as Kellogg's Cornflakes. Broadcasting's a new, big local industry, not to be sniffed at. And then along came another chocolate bus, with a giant blown-up Stuart Hall on the side, the BBC Mills Manchester man who's famous for introducing on the telly silly games It's a Knockout and people singing in telephones on the wireless.
Cronton Colliery, the closure confirmed. The miners say it's an excuse to cut capacity. The Arts Council cuts, its regional director answers the critics. Cuts in the library service in Manchester.
Stuart Hall presents the local news on the telly, and on the chocolate-coloured bus does public service advertising cheap pensioners' travel tickets. Like any other 19th century millman, he's now building little mills of his own. He's opened up a chain of travel agents' businesses in his own well-known name. So I went to see this business phenomenon in studio.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Of course.
Is Stuart Hall your real name?
Yes, it is.
You're not Higginbottom?
No, I'm not.
Born poor or rich?
Born,
middling.
I wouldn't say. My dad was a baker. You've got to play the music now.
What is
My
that
dad
music?
were a great baker. My dad were. We had Joe Gladwin on this programme last week.
That is an advertisement.
Is it?
Oh.
But we can't say who.
You can't.
We're
say
not gonna-
no, you can't
We're-
say advertising.
We're not going to say it.
You've never been bought up by the other side, have you?
No. No, I haven't. Nobody's asked me.
That is why.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
you're a national man now because you do people singing in telephones and
That's right.
funny games.
Yes.
Why don't you go to London?
I've never really enjoyed working in London. It seems so impersonal. And being a simple northern lad, I do find up here that a level of society that stimulates me.
Can I ask you how you got into the business of the Stuart Hall travel? Was that before you went into television?
The Stuart Hall Travel,
Yes.
my commercial enterprise.
Yeah.
The reason I went into travel is because I've been booted around the world now for the past 15 years doing It's a Knockout, and I've made some great friends, and it seemed rather a shame that I should come out of television and not capitalise on the strengths which I had. Worry
Made
about
money
it.
at the travel shop yet?
Yes, I've made money, but I spend it in other directions because I've got my little children's museum. I've been collecting clocks and watches now for 20-odd years. I've got, about 9 rooms full of clocks and watches and
Stuart Hall
polish
Children's
ons.
Museum.
So I open a children's museum at the last drop at Bromley Cross, and we've had 85,000 people through.
Clever as the barrel load of monkeys, and he doesn't even own the big mill when it goes bust. So I asked the big question you would ask of a captain of industry.
Do you despair for the state of the north of England?
I don't, because we have up here, and we've had since the Industrial Revolution, and you know it, an innate sense of humour which will see us through everything. You've seen it through wars and tempest and torment and famine.
But you must cry sometimes when night after night you have to read depressing news.
I do.
Factories
It does
closing.
upset me. It does upset me. I can quite understand why newsreaders go completely off their tops and are to be found in psychiatric wards. It is very depressing, but a lot of it is not true.
Singing down the telephone. Or
Well, no, that's the other
silly
side.
games.
That's what we do, and that's the antidote. That's what we have up here, this concert party attitude that no matter what successive governments do to us, we shall always come up roses. There's always time for a song and a smile.
Turn your lights on.
Right.
Ready, stand by, scale on 1, please. Stand by, sir. Cut. Cue, sir.
Good afternoon.
Cut.
Down the street at Granada is another local fruit, as equally northern steeped. But where Stuart Hall slips down sweet as buttered Hovis, Granada's man, to meet him you need to take your teeth. Both agree Manchester's great, and mustard keen they are on the importance of their region.
I mean, I always like to say that there have only been two major revolutions happened in history, two social revolutions. One was the agrarian revolution, which happened somewhere between the Tigris and the Euphrates about 4,000 years ago when the overproduction of a certain kind of corn happened. And the second was the dawn of factories, which happened where the water fell down from the Pennines and formed this great semicircle of mountains, the pivot of which is Manchester. So those are only two great social events that have happened in history. You could also mention the birth of Jesus Christ and the rape of Helen, but I prefer those two.
Tony Wilson's personality is the front of Granada's nightly weft of local news from Manchester. I went to listen to him sitting down in an empty studio in front of empty cameras beneath the dark lights that are so bright for half an hour nightly when he fronts their local Granada Reports TV magazine.
My first and foremost thing is art. I mean, I'm an art critic. That's what I was it's the only thing I've been trained as. I went to Cambridge wanting to learn to be an art critic, and I became an art critic. And that's all I am. That's all I really know. And I treat a Granada Reports programme as an artefact, which I criticise on straight, prac-crit terms.
Do you get depressed when you have to read news bulletins so often about places closing and people being thrown out of work?
I would actually accuse myself of a degree of insincerity in that when that red light comes on, these things we've got over there, these cameras, when the red light comes on, you are a performer. And one's voice maybe goes down. When you see the next sort of story is another factory closing, your voice maybe goes down 3 points a little bit to be sadder and a bit quieter. And maybe one of those points is because you yourself think, oh, that's sad. And the other 2 points is because it's necessary, because it'll look silly if you're laughing when you read the story.
There are parallels between Stuart Hall of the BBC and Tony Wilson of the other side. It's uncanny that both have used the fame of their faces to go into business, little mills of their own. As Stuart Hall has his clock museum and travel shops, so Wilson has branched into the more Manchester tradition of radical outrage. Like other famous Mancunians, Anthony Pope's Catamite Burgess, Peter Old Man of Hoy Maxwell Davis, or even more apposite, Frederick Raincoat Engels.
It's political, what I do. What I do is very heavily political.
How do you mean?
Well, the business is political, very essentially.
But it's music.
Yes.
It's disco.
Yes.
People bopping about.
Yes, it's youth culture, and youth culture is one of the few great negativistic moments in society in this century.
That negativistic? I can hardly say that word.
Well, just saying no, sod off to the predominant culture.
Sod off. I wanted to see his culture. It's a record business and a nightclub called the Hacienda for very smart people, and we walked there. Manchester, this summer's been like Karachi. All the sewers collapsed, holes in the ground in every main street big enough for a tribe of elephants or a chocolate bus. When we got there, it was a dignified, scrubbed brick warehouse. But once inside, very modern and very brutal. It's stylish of its kind.
A lot of money was spent on the design, and our number 2 designer designed it, a guy called Ben Kelly. Architectural Review called it a landmark in British interior design. It's kind of I would describe the design as post-high-tech, or Ben calls it industrial fantasy. It has, in a way, with all these great big girders and beams, which metal girders that exist throughout the building, it was going to have to be high-tech. I mean, you couldn't really go neoclassical, which perhaps would have been more in tune with last year.
How different from industrial fact is Philby Bar, the sign in red neon running writing above the multicoloured disco lights. The Kim Philby Bar to honour the Cambridge arch traitor. The whole schmozzle topped off like 2 fingers to you, respectable England. It's the pits, isn't it? In the city Priestley called the home of living causes, the city of Neville Cardus, Alistair Cook and the Manchester Guardian, of Richard Cobden and free trade, and over a century of sensible liberal ideas.
Where did the money come from for factory records then?
My mother left me, when she died in 1975, she left me £10,000. I used £3,000 of it for the first record and got £3,500 back. £500 was split up as profit.
A Marxist with a merchant bank account?
Yes. Early Marxist, please, early Marxist. But that's just a religion, isn't it? Being a Marxist is a religion. Doesn't tell you where you have your bank account, does it really?
I don't think Priestley would have understood the sod-off culture, or how deep it's gripped all parts of England now, and stopped the building of Priestley's all-hands-together beloved socialism. Or would he? I remember when he was in Manchester, he went for lunch with co-op commercial travellers in an upstairs room. We drank beer, he writes, and a good deal of it. First course was black pudding, blood and sawdust. Next course, meat pie. The club speechmakers were large, robust men who stood up boldly and insulted the other speakers and officials of the club with gusto. That's it. Arrogant insult has always been a Manchester speciality. Maybe, I wonder, because this city has had to fight to prove itself the second city of England, to brag it was first in the world with a passenger railway, first to split the atom, first to make a Rolls-Royce car, and first to have the Macintosh because of the damp.
Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, very nice. Well, the lads now on stage are just going to take a well-earned break, but we'll see them part 3 of the show in 5 minutes' time. Don't go away.
After listening to the TV faces, off to a late-night nightclub, where a man who gets scant attention from the media performs an act like Priestley saw with the co-op men, an act of such vulgarity and insult, in a cellar up a back passage. He is, to me, the spirit of Manchester.
Put your hands together and bring on stage the real star of the show. Let's hear it for the fabulous Lamar.
This man, Frank Lamar, has won enormous affection in Manchester among Manchester people as Foo-Foo, Frank in a frock.
Her nose and flicked it in her beer. Now stop it. Have we any virgins in? Yeah! Who with the legs in the air? I think she's had rickets. How are you? Lovely face for a Jap. Yeah. Sit down, frizzy head. I think I've seen her on telly with a bolt through her neck. Look at her and all. Look here, look. She's the only one the Ripper run away from. Look. How are you, love? Look at her hair and all like a backcomb Brillo pad, look. Very nice. Will you tell this one to sit down? I've seen more fat on a chip.
What is surprising, said Priestley about Lancashire working folk, is a grimly realistic outlook and brutal speech, combined with a gaiety, a zest for pleasure.
Shut your hole, you. Somebody's shilling to have you destroyed. Sit down, you've got skid marks on your frock. Ow! So lovely. Look at the spots on the face and all. And it's like sleeping with a nettles cake. Look. Shame, no. Poor cow's had rickets. No vulgarity tonight! No vulgarity! It's going to be a clean... Oh, look at the three virgins there as well, look. Not you. You flat muggrass and wimpers. Virgin, she said. She fell on a dummy and that was attached to a Guinness bottle. Look at the three virgins there, though. Never had it, doesn't want it, not likely to get it. Look. Hey, you've had nits as well, haven't you? Look at it. Who's done that to you there? Who's done that to you? The poor cow. Who's done that to you? It's a shame. Bloody hell. No, I'm not mentioning no vulgarity tonight. And look here at the end here, ladies and gentlemen. Look, little Joe 90 there. Look at the suit and all. It shines like snot on the wall. Look there. Look.
The girls come for the hen parties, and the party of girls will send me a note to the stage and say such things as, Dear Fufu, we have with us our friend Mary, who is a virgin and getting married on Saturday in white. Now that's what she tells us. We also believe she's got suspenders and white knickers on, and she's dying, absolutely dying, to dance with you, your famous dance of the ruptured cucumber. And then, of course, I bring her on stage. Well, for a start, I tear her to pieces.
Come here, love. Are you shy? Come here. Put your hand on my titties. Come here. Ah, little baby. Come here. I'm sure I'm going quick now. Come here, love. Is it a white wedding? It's a white wedding, any road. How long have you been with him?
About a month.
3 years. It's a white wedding. You're marrying a puff. 3 years? I don't like it. Come here, I want you. What does he do for a living? Oh, bloody hell. Tool fitter.
I really rip her to pieces. By this time, the girl doesn't know whether she's black or white. But I think the essence of it, you see, is the warmth. And this is one of my talents, is being able to insult, but in a very nice way.
Come on! Come on! What's it now?
Such a nice way that his little club is constantly booked, booming with insult. But I did wonder, can you laugh through every tempest and famine in ex-King Cotton's kingdom?
There'll always be an England. England shall be free. Oh, I love you all, so come and see the foo-foo of our show again.
I've got the essence of making people forget the recessions and the outside of my club. Once they're in it, people like from Hume and from various big hit recession parts of Manchester come, even spending rent, but then they say, well, we don't give a damn because, like, tomorrow we'll face it, but we're here tonight.
West of Manchester the land is flat, a bog, through which trails the Manchester Ship Canal. Every night boats take the city's sewage to dump in the ocean. Like an umbilical cord, Manchester is connected to the Irish Sea. What a mess we have made. And yet it's always been so in this part. Before Jeff Nuttall called it the anal tract of England, before Priestley, I thought of Defoe. In 1724, he passed by this great bog, then called Chatmoss, and wrote, "The surface looks black and dirty. It's frightful to think of. It will bear neither horse nor man. What nature meant by such a useless production is hard to imagine. The land is entirely waste." And today, in the distance, the really big chemical works, the silver mill chimneys of Ellesmere Port Chemical Works, like a super glue that makes Manchester seem as old-fashioned as flour and water paste.
Next week, Ray Gosling continues his journey to find himself on the M62 motorway, where he discovers Packies and hobbits and sex in the hills. Not Exactly in His Footsteps was produced in Manchester by Alistair Wilson. And by the way, there's a full account of that journey in the current issue of The Listener, which is available now at all good booksellers.